Hi, I'm going to share with you today my method that I used for distressing my denim shorts. There are a wide variety of distressing techniques. I am simply going to show you the ones that worked well for me in my project. The denim that I will be showing you today ranges in stretch percentage, but it is all woven denim fabric. I have not experimented with distressing knit denim-like fabric, so this method only applies to woven denim. Now the stretch percentage is important when considering how you wish to distress your denim. The higher the stretch percentage, the less distressing the denim can handle. The denim that I will heavily distress only has 10% stretch, which is really just a give. It does have some lycra, but it has very little stretch. If the denim has more stretch, it generally cannot handle holes. The weft of the fabric will not be the white thread that you're familiar with seeing that closes the holes. It will be the lycra threads, and they will snap and break, and you'll be left with just an open hole, which isn't quite the look that we're going for with this distress process. I have read that it is not recommended to bleach denim with a high stretch percentage. I have been wearing my bleached denim shorts that have 25 to 30% stretch for weeks in heavy rotation, and they have not been compromised in any way in recovery or structural integrity. And so I feel confident recommending lightly bleaching the denim that I used in this project. So I am now wearing the denim shorts that I just finished in the sew along. And they are at the point where I have the belt loops and everything in the buttonhole and everything finished, but I don't have my hardware put on yet. You can distress after the hardware is applied, but I recommend waiting and applying the hardware after the distressing process. The only top stitching that has not been applied is a top stitching that runs down the side seam here and a little bar tack here. I find that an area that I like to distress is across the front, and one important thing to remember is to not sand with your sandpaper across any of your top stitching. It will ruin your top stitching, so be careful to avoid any top stitching when you are sanding. So I'm wearing my shorts and sitting on my hearth to show you the method that I use to begin the distressing process. So we'll go ahead and take a look at that now. Now the first step that I take in distressing my denim is to sand it with sandpaper. And I will show you two ways that I have done that. I have used flat sandpaper. When I first used the flat sandpaper, I simply folded it once and then about an inch away again, so that you can see the two fold lines, and that when I grasped it like this, I had a flat surface with which to sand. This method was rough on my fingers, and so I developed this method, simply sliding a block in and sanding this way so that I didn't have to press my fingers down where I was actually sanding. And this worked well for me. And then I remembered that they make these. I did not have to reinvent the wheel. So these are sanding blocks. This one comes with two grades, fine and medium. And it's the same basic idea. It has sandpaper all the way around. So this is what I will be using today in the tutorial to show you. Now the reason I'm wearing the shorts is because I want the sanding to occur in the natural pattern in which it would if the distressing happened through natural wear. I want it to look as natural as possible. So when I sit, I create folds or wrinkles in my denim. And it is along the top of these folds that we want the sanding. We want to try to keep the folds as crisp as possible. So I pinch the fold to isolate the ridge at the top of the fold. I grab the second one and lay it next to it, and I just kind of grab 2 or 3 folds and grasp them together. I use my sanding block, pinching the folds together to try to isolate the sanding to the top of the ridge. Simply sand along the ridges. Now, the amount of sanding is personal preference, and the length of sanding is a personal preference. I usually work down toward the center crotch line and then allow the folds to spread out by the leg. So then I work on them individually because they widen a bit. And then the two folds that I have up here, I simply grasp and sand in the same manner. And as I said before, the amount of sanding is up to you. Once you have the whiskering in your jeans sanded, you have a couple options. You can simply launder them like this, and the areas that you sanded will be very slightly lighter. This is a way to distress your denim without applying bleach. The areas that you have sanded will react more strongly to the bleach when you do bleach them. So as we move on to the next step, the areas that you've sanded may not appear to be lighter, but once you bleach them, they will react more than the areas that you haven't sanded. So I'm going to go ahead and sand the other side. I'm going to take them off and do a little bit of sanding with them off. Now that I have the lines sanded, I can see where each line belongs. I can decide if I want to do a little additional sanding. Now, all of the sanding that I will do to this pair of shorts you will see on camera, even if it is fast forwarded, so you can get a general idea of the amount of sanding that I apply to achieve the effects that I do. Now, as I move closer to this crotch point, I be careful to avoid sanding any of my top stitching. I place my finger at top to protect it. So now I'm simply going to go over each of the whisker lines that I sanded previously and make them a little bit heavier. Now I do a couple other small areas. Sometimes I will put a line or two up on the pocket. Again, avoid any top stitching. I also sometimes crease my waistband, being careful to avoid the top stitching. Now, if you would like to crease it twice, put a fold down the center. You can create a slightly different weather pattern, like that, with two ridges, just so that all of your sanding patterns are not identical to one another. You can go upward at a slant. And if you wish, you can distress the back. I have found that distressing only the front doesn't give me a look that is uneven and that I'm dissatisfied with, but you are welcome to distress the back. You could do a couple lines along the bottom, along the seat. If you wish to try them on to see where these lines naturally fall, you're welcome to do that. If I do distressing lines on the back, I sand much, much lighter. You can do in the center of the pocket, avoid the top stitching. And I'm going to come down at an angle to change the wear pattern. Now I'm simply going to launder this pair, and you will see the amount of distressing that is evident with this level of distressing only, simply sanding. You will see that the bottom here will fray. I will turn mine up and allow the fraying to be visible. If you're hemming, then the fraying is not applicable to you. You will see that the lines lighten up just a bit, and then we'll move on to our bleaching techniques. If you wish to further distress your shorts, you can continue the sanding process. The amount of sanding and the placement is a personal preference. If you wish, you can simply sand a lighter spot on the front of the shorts, or you can sand the entire surface. Any place that you sand is going to be more affected by the bleach during the bleaching process. You can sand the top of the pockets along the edge and the top of the waistband as well. You can fold the top stitching out of the way, covering it with the denim to help protect it in order to better be able to sand. If you wish to heavily distress your denim with holes, I highly recommend doing this step, taking time and care to sand the entire shorts. If I have opted to sand the entire surface of the shorts, I often go back and redefine the whiskers on the front, sanding over them again so that they stand out more from the rest of the sanding.